Hello, my friends. I'm Lori Ashcraft, your host for Viva La Evolution, produced by Recovery and Resilience Solutions, which is a training and consulting branch of Crestwood Behavioral Health. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here. It's a rainy day here in California this morning, which we love these days. And we live in fire country, so any little moisture we get, we're really grateful for. We used to call it bad weather, and now we're excited about it. Okay, today, oh my gosh, I have a really special guest for you today, Dr. Mark Ragins. And I first met Mark, I'm going to say maybe 20 years ago, and he was the medical director at a program called The Village, which was an award-winning demonstration project that really revealed and taught thousands of us how to do person-centered, recovery-based services. Those of us who had an inkling about how to do it learned a lot more from what was happening at the Village. And I remember when this idea was conceived, I was deputy director at the state of California for community services. And we had some money to do demonstration projects, and this was one of them. And then, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years later, it actually happened. And I'm just going to read Mark's bio to you. This is out of, I want to tell you about, this is his, this is a book, his most recent book. A Rebellious Guide to Psychosis and Other Extraordinary Experiences, Journeys Beyond the Frontier. I'm reading that because it's probably backwards to you. Anyway, this is an amazing book full of stories and research findings and other really interesting material. If you want to know more about it, I highly recommend this book. So I'm just going to read his bio out of the back because I'm afraid I'll get it mixed up if I don't. So Mark Ragins was the medical director for 27 years at the Mental Health America Village in Long Beach, California, which is an award-winning model of recovery-based mental health services. After that, he became the only psychiatrist at University of California, Long Beach. These are true stories of more than 30 years of clinical work with some of the most underserved and difficult to engage people in our community. Just reading, not all of it, just pieces. Hundreds of presentations and lectures to wide-ranging audiences nationally and internationally was done by Mark. He is one of the true pioneers and leaders of person-centered recovery-based psychiatry. Many of his writings are posted online, so you could go online and read some of this, including his short book, A Road to Recovery, which has been translated into many, many, many languages. Now, there's a long list here of all of his awards, and if I read them all to you, we'd be here a long time, so just take my word for it. He's been recognized for the work he's done over the years by everybody. So I'm just so grateful that I can share some time of his with you today. We're going to have him back. Remember when we talked to Dr. George Woods a couple weeks ago? Well, in the near future, we're having Mark come back and George come back, and we can hear them talk together about stuff. So that's going to be really fun and exciting. Don't you just love learning new things? That just makes my heart sing. So, well, okay, that's enough talking from me. Let's get on with hearing from Mark. This is a little longer than usual. I didn't edit it at all because I wanted you to hear every last drop. Okay. Oh, and you'll get to hear me confess that I fell in love with him about 20 years ago. For the first time, I confess that. So you'll hear that. Well, Mark, thank you so much for being willing to join us today. I know you're busy. I know you have a lot of irons in the fire, and I'm just grateful that you joined us. I have admired you for, I don't know, at least 15 years when we first came to the village to visit in Long Beach and met you there and listened to you talk. And I thought, oh my gosh, I wish there were 1,000 more psychiatrists like you. And I remember this one thing you said often that just stuck with me and a lot of the people that work with me. And we would say it to each other. And it was, we're not here. The mental health system is not here to treat mental illness. It should be here to help people have a better life. So you just expanded that little teeny corridor of, treating an illness to a life, and of course we know that a mental illness can't, everything we know about social determinants now, you were ahead of your time with that and just really impressed us. And today I'd love to have you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, but I'd really like to go back and recapture some of the amazing things you did at the village. And then I'm not going to be able to resist having you tell us about your amazing book, where you've put this all together, complete with stories and other things that make it so, graphics that make it so interesting. So okay, shall we start with what you're doing now?
So for the last year, I've been the psychiatrist on the Department of Health Services mobile clinic teams in Los Angeles. There's 4 of these around the county, and these are healthcare teams, like primary care teams for people who can't come into clinics and they're homeless. I've been wandering the entire county from Lancaster to Long Beach, from Venice to Pomona, talking to people. I spent a lot of time in vans, talking to people in on the streets and encampments, in tiny homes, in transitional housing things, in shelters. And this has been a very dramatic year. I've been doing this for a little over a year now, so September last year, a little over a year now. And it's been a very dramatic year for homelessness in Los Angeles, with declaring an emergency and all these extra things and building all kinds of lots and lots of money and attention and trying to figure this out. And one of the things I'd point out about this is that people have the idea that says, hey, there's nobody helping these homeless people. Why doesn't somebody do something about all this stuff? I think I saw a thing that said there are 120 different outreach teams on the streets of Los Angeles of different kinds working with homeless people over the way. And we have thousands of people in various transitional programs run by the health service, by the VA, by the mental health. The applications and paperwork, computer systems that run all these things. The complexity is just enormous, because the scope of this is just enormous.
Yes.
But I didn't really get into it for the giant scope of things. When you knew me younger, we were trying to change the world and change the whole system, and part of me still wants to be heroic like that. But as we get a little, as we get a little older and, I don't know, beaten down or more jaded or something, I take most of my joy at this point, or most of my feeling of accomplishment, of just being with somebody who nobody has talked to, or no one's talking about themselves. They talk about, do you have your documents ready, and do you need some clean needles, and do you got some snacks? People talked about stuff like this.
Yeah.
But to say, let me ask about who you are and how did this all happen? How did you get to this point? How do you put it together? Can we make some sense of your life? And from where you are, is there any hopeful path from here? Instead of just thinking day by day in survival things, there's some place from where you're at going on. Can we think of some way to put together along the way? And I spent a lot of time with people, maybe an hour and a half with people, sometimes even a little more, with these amazing stories of all kinds of things, and help them feel that they're important, that their story matters, that somebody has put, I understand someone. There's a lady the other day who some of these people started doing quite well. This is a lady who got a degree at USC while raising a couple of kids on her own, and is falling on the street. And she said, well, I was just trying to get a piece of paperwork filled out for GR, but that was so much more insightful than I thought it was going to be. Because it enabled her to think about herself and where things are going. But it can be a very frustrating business because it's hard to find people the next time. People move around, and there's a lot of clashes and animosity and frustration everywhere in this. So you take strain, can any given person help them feel like they matter in a person again?
Well, see, that's the you that I fell in love with 15 years ago. I didn't tell you that. I didn't tell anybody until now. But because you had that same approach to helping people pick their medication. I remember you would say, they would say, I'm not taking my medication. And you would say, well, let's look at the different types of medication you could take. This one does this, it has these side effects. That one does this. You would give them their options. And then you would say, which side effects do you think you could live with the most easily? And by then you had them engaged and they were making the decision. You weren't just shoving something
down their throat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a little about how my view of meds have changed, and even a bit of Courtney's study that goes with it. So I was taught way back when our meds were all really toxic and difficult, that you give medicine for a while and then you stop it. That's kind of episodic, and then you watch carefully to see when you need to restart it. That disappeared in the 80s when Prozac was invented and had many less side effects, and then it became you have an underlying chemical imbalance and you need to take pills forever to treat these illnesses or whatever it is. That's not my view of it, actually. My view is that each of us is born with whoever we are.
Yeah.
We have our strengths, our weaknesses, our talents, our temperaments. We even have a blueprint for our growth and development, comes in our DNA in the factory packaging. And then life happens. And sometimes this is warm and supportive and we blossom and grow and terrific things happen. Sometimes it's traumatic and harmful and we end up stunted or growing in ways we never expected to. And we go along and sometimes we get stuck really far from where we were intended to be, from the first people that we're meant to be. And so when we get stuck, then we start spinning our wheels, and we can get stuck in, I don't have any energy anymore, it's not worth it anymore, I'm stuck in a bunch of guilt, I'm stuck with my head spinning around, I'm stuck in a world I made up of my own with these voices and with the paranoia going around, I'm stuck reliving a trauma, being raped over and over again, I'm stuck being isolated, I'm stuck in some way. And these stucknesses are what we now call mental illnesses. Mental illnesses, as in DSM-3 or DSM-5 now, started in 3, but 5, which by the way, 1 and 2 were real different. And the 3 through 5 are descriptions of common clusters of human suffering that comes when you're stuck. They're not the causes, they're the effects.
Yes.
The cause might be some chemical thing, but not usually, actually. You'd say, "Oh, I'm depressed because I have a major depression." That's circular thinking.
Well, because what we heard in the I guess maybe starting in the 70s even, really, it was this whole thing about a chemical imbalance. It became like the nice way to say that you have a mental illness. You just have an imbalance, honey.
So let me describe how this makes a difference in person with someone I saw a few months ago here on the street thing. So this is a man who's been on the streets for about 6 years now. He's in his 50s and he's on using fentanyl and meth, and he hasn't seen his wife or kids since they left when they were 12. And they finally talked him into going into rehab to try to get clean again, and he's taking some Suboxone for his assistance with his opiates. And they refer to me because he's, besides just the substance, he seems to have a depression or an anxiety to work on. Maybe he could use some psych meds too. So his presentation to me was, Yeah, I've been depressed my whole life. I think I have a chemical imbalance. It comes for no reason, and it's always been there. Maybe I could use some meds for this. I said, really, your whole life? Were you depressed when you were 6? Well, no, I was fine back then, or 9, or, well, all right, tell me what started. Well, it turned out he grew up in Southern California, and he was a star volleyball athlete and really good and stuff. But his parents had this terrible divorce, really ugly, the kind where the dad kidnaps the kids and sneaks into another state
Oh,
in
yeah.
the middle of the night, sort of thing.
Mhm.
And that he's in high school when this happens. It ruins his whole life. There's no beach volleyball in Illinois where he goes to, and then all his friends are gone and all that stuff. And so he promises himself he will never mess up his kids life like that. He's going to make sure his marriage is steady and got it together before he has kids. And he's successful. He becomes a car dealership and doing these various things. He drinks a fair bit, but he's successful. He gets a relationship going. They stay together for quite a long time, make sure the marriage is stable. They're together for like 10 years before they have their first kid. Were you depressed and all that? No, it wasn't any of that. It wasn't your whole life. So what? All right, what happened next?
Uh-huh.
Their first son is born with some kind of horrible, extremely rare, hard to diagnose genetic neurologic condition, so that he's paralyzed and like in a wheelchair most for his whole life.
Oh my gosh. So here we have a major stressor come along.
This father, who prided himself in his athletics and stuff, I'm going to raise my son and we're going to do all these things. His entire image of how he planned his head so nothing will go wrong and a kid will be fine, it's just shattered by something entirely out of everyone's control. It took like 3 years to make this diagnosis even. He can't really so he turns back to his usual alcohol to handle this extra stress. And that leads to a DUI, and that leads to getting fired, and that leads to arguments with his wife, that leads to divorce, that leads to being on the streets with nothing, that leads to a rehab attempt that doesn't work. And now he's so guilt-ridden that he promised himself he would be there as son, and he hasn't, because it's all broken up, and he's too ashamed to even try to reconnect, even though he lives only a few miles from where his wife and son are. Now, that story, he's not depressed and anxious for no reason.
No.
That story gives us something to do, and it isn't meds about how to come to terms with, you couldn't handle that, and you turned to that, and it's a shame. Can you rebuild? Can you get acceptance from AA groups and 12 steps in rebuilding your life? Can you return to her not out of a feeling of shame and guilt, but a feeling like I can accept what I've done, to do some forgiveness while you're in this program? That's what you need to work on. You know how 12-step works. You know how moral inventory steps work. Do these things while you're doing this, and that's how you'll get unstuck.
Yes.
Remember, I said the whole point is getting unstuck.
Right.
When you're moving again, then you're developing again. Then you're growing and moving on with life. Maybe not the way you expected it to be, but you're moving on with life. The point of meds, in my mind, is not to treat an underlying chemical imbalance, except rarely. The point of meds is, can they give you a boost in getting unstuck here?
I
If
love
your energy incredibly low, that some Wellbutrin would help. You can't get off meth because you could end up sleeping for 3 weeks behind it. You can't face reality because you're all paranoid, but can we lower that down? You can actually face that your kids were taken away and what's happened along the way. Can we, is there stuff, so I'm not even, you don't have to even believe you have a mental illness at all. My question is there a way you can get unstuck that meds could help this, so that you can go back and growing and develop, and then you could stop your meds when you're back to growing and developing again?
Yeah.
Now that sounds pie in the sky to the vast majority of psychiatrists and family members and NAMI and all this stuff. You must be talking about better people than I am. This isn't people on the street, except the guy just told you how he sounds like a mess, doesn't he? But I do see people on the street.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to one of the most famous pieces of recovery research and look at it through these eyes. Because I think the problem is we keep looking through the same eyes.
Yes.
Of mental illnesses, of underlying chemical imbalances, of hopelessness, of fearfulness, of we can't connect to people.
Well, let me just interject something. I think the other thing, I think I think it isn't just psychiatry or mental health. I think in general, we're looking for a quick fix. And if we sit down with someone and can slap a label on them, then we think we know them. Once we get the label on, okay, this is who you are. And then we think we know how to treat them because we know what the book says. If you have this label, you do this to them. And then we do our stuff. And of course, I mean, if you look at our outcomes, they aren't good. They just aren't very good. And I come back to, I'm going to just, in my words, kind of say what you're saying is relationship is key to everything, to making this happen. And I love the way you're framing this. It's not like you're sick or you're wrong or you're bad. It's like you're just stuck. And how can we get unstuck? I love that.
So let me tell you that relationship thing for a second.
Okay.
And this has got a little to do with burnout too. Is that when I see somebody new, I've been doing this for 40 years now. When I see somebody new, I'm not looking for how fast I can understand what's wrong with them and know what's going on and know what to do next. I'm looking for what makes that person's story unique, and I've never heard it before. I've never heard that story before of that man with the son going on, and that keeps me fresh. That each one is different.
Yes,
you don't have a relationship with a category of people.
No.
You don't have a relationship with a diagnosis. Your relationship with what is that person's individual story, that in their journey, their life along the way, and so each one becomes a unique story, and that makes it a lot less boring for me.
Yes.
It isn't like, oh, I've seen 700 cases of schizophrenia and you just give them this med for voices. It's like, no, I've seen 700 different
human beings,
unique people.
Yeah.
Along the way. And doctoring, the medical model is set up to the other way. Medical model is set up as fast as you can you make a generalization off this person to put them so you already know what's going on. And that blocks you both from seeing what's unique about this person and makes you burn out by making distance so you're not connecting with the actual person, let alone make them not like you as much. All right, let me go back to Courtney Harding for a minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this study, I don't know if your readers know this, it's hot off the presses. It was released in 1987.
Oh, I know that one. I thought you were going to come up with a new one.
You probably know about Courtney's study, which almost everybody, I shouldn't say everybody knows, because it still is not commonly known. This study was when they closed the Vermont State Hospital. Mm-hmm. The people who were diagnosed with schizophrenia, they only had Thorazine at the time. They didn't respond to all the Thorazine, plenty of people. And then they let them out and put them in a halfway house and try to give them a life. And they looked to see what had happened 25 years later when they found them wandering around. They wandered around doing it. And the stunning thing is, these back ward people with schizophrenia who've been institutionalized, thought was hopeless, were 2/3 of them had recovered. Only 13% of them in the hospital, half of them were working. They had friends. Maybe only 12% had symptoms you could see. And we still don't believe this. She was hooted out of places because people don't believe this. And I want to make 2 points about this study, besides that no one believes it. One is, his name's going to escape me. The psychiatrist who made up DSM-3, Spitzer. So she presents this to the guy who's making up DSM-3 and all these categories, and he's just enraged by this, and he has all these questions to try to demean her, but she's actually knows answers all because very competent lady.
Yeah.
And so finally he says, well, what do you want me to do? He says, I want you to write DSM-3, not the schizophrenia, the chronic deteriorating condition, but the 2/3 of people with it recover. And he says, I'm not going to do that because I know it isn't true. Mm. No matter what your data says.
Yeah.
And what she says is, take a baseball analogy. If you're a young umpire and you're calling balls and strikes, they say, I call them by the book. And the book says it's chronically deteriorating. Just look at DSM 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
If you're a umpire is kind of experienced, been around, you say, I call them as I see them. but we see people doing poorly in a very poor system who are very impoverished and have crappy housing and no job. And so we spend all our time with people doing worse. People do well and leave us. We don't see it all.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the huge important things about having peers work among us who are actually open about their conditions. They say, wait a minute, I have what she called a clinician's distortion.
Yes.
Sorting it because I saw something. That's the middle one. And when you get to be an expert referee, you say it's a strike because I said it was. And we've got people like Spitzer in charge of the biological psychiatry who've been saying, I don't care what your data shows. I don't care what your life shows. I don't care how many people you got better in this program. I know people with psychosis and schizophrenia do poorly. They're a burden on society. They need to be locked up and taken care of.
Well, okay, go ahead.
Second thing I want to say is about, which she didn't put in the papers, is about medication usage. These people, they were put in a halfway house where this is before Social Security invented, barely any authorities, and they were using them, but the program was run by the State Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, by the way.
Yeah, I remember
when was
that.
The last time you saw a bunch of mental health money getting siphoned through the State Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, or homeless money going through them, by the way.
Yeah.
But their goal was to get people a place to stay and live, some jobs to take care of things and connections, and then within 2 years, if they fail, they come back and they're up and back, and for 2 years to do this. No Social Security, very little meds. Everyone who recovered, all those 2/3 of the people, they were off their meds by then. The only people who stayed off on meds were the ones doing badly, because the meds were used in those first 2 years to enable you to get friends and housing and employment and get your life back track, to get unstuck.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then they could get off of it relatively easily. Today, nobody gets unstuck. And so when you try to get off your meds, it goes disastrously. Most of the time. Not sometimes, yes, there's a lot of variation in all this stuff. But the point is, our goal in meds is stay on this to treat your illness, rather than saying, let's figure out what's going on in your life so that you get unstuck and moving forward, so you don't need the meds anymore. And that was true even for this group of the most serious backward people with schizophrenia.
Yes.
Looking at them. This isn't just true of college students or a drug addict I found on the street.
Mm-hmm. I have a blog that goes with each one of these podcasts. I think for this one, I'm going to put a summary of Courtney's study in, because I forget that people don't know about that study. It's
because they know it isn't true, even though it is.
Yes.
Or as my mother said, when I believe it, then I'll see it.
Yes. But what I find too is, when I go to different facilities or programs, I still get, people talk about recovery now, but they often don't do it. And they often just are still doing the same thing they used to do. They're just calling it something else. But I find what happens is they have to see it. They have to see it. I can talk till I'm blue in the face and they'll kind of nod and be polite. But when they see it, then they get it. And that's why hiring peers to work alongside of other professionals, where they can see, well, you were on my caseload last month or last year, and now you're here working along beside me. I get it now. I get that it can happen. Something we do. Go ahead.
Let me tell you a bit about why I believe we get stuck in doing recovery. We don't actually switch to recovery. We do the same things with a different name.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to hear that.
I believe that recovery is an actual revolution. It's an actual paradigm shift. It isn't just adding a program like peer support, or adding a program like 988 or crisis support things, or clubhouses, or these programs are all cool, but it's actually a paradigm shift. And it's actually 3 paradigm shifts, strange enough, which makes it really hard to do. The first one is the one you started with that you said you admired me about. Yeah. Is to switch our focus from treating illnesses to helping people. There's tons of people say we're doing whole person care, And when you look, that means their problem list has illnesses of their whole body and their mind.
Yes.
That's not whole person. That's multiple specialty care.
Right.
This is about your life and looking at a developmental point of view. That's the first shift. And by the way, when you think that you can't get SSI because my life is a mess, you have to get because you have an illness. You can't even get a bus pass because your life is a mess. It has to be an illness or because
Right.
everything is illness defined.
Yeah.
The second transformation or paradigm shift is from professionally driven to client driven, from coercive or compliance to collaboration and empowerment.
Yes.
That when we get frustrated by how people are doing, oh, look at these people in the street, it's a mess, they won't do anything. Why can't I just make them do it? Why can't I give you a little more power? I'll make a care card, I'll make a AOT, I'll make a conservatorship, I'll make a lot sniff, we've been making up these things for decades now.
Yes, yes.
And they work just about as well as trying to make your teenager do something.
Yes.
They instead of that approach, and that approach is, I know what's best for you. The strength is in me, the weakness is in you, and I'm going to be able to fix you if only you follow my brilliant advice more often and do what I tell you to do. Because I have the degree, I've been doing this for you. I know what I'm doing. I know what's best for you. The transformation says, no. The healing force is in you. It is your life force. That's what we need to get unstuck. That's what we need to get moving again. We need to have you motivated, your strengths, find strengths and struggles. When you're suffering, that doesn't mean as you said, let's take a pill, do something rapidly to cope with this and get rid of suffering. No, that means we need to learn and grow from our suffering.
Yes.
In order to be better, wholer people when you come out the other side.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the second transformation we don't like doing. The third one is shifting from deficit-based to strength-based. Our system is built on let's fix what's wrong with you, rather than let's build what's right about you. Let's build resilience, let's build protective factors, let's build meaning out of your suffering. Most of us do not get our lives better by fixing everything that's wrong with us. We get our lives better by enhancing the things that are right about us and exploiting the things that are right about us. And our current system doesn't barely even, if you're lucky, they'll write what some strengths are, and then the strengths are things like takes their meds.
Right. Or I've been saying takes a shower every week.
Right. That's not a strength. Your strength is you're funny. Your strength is you're combative. Your strength is because you were raised by an alcoholic dad who was violent, you have a sixth sense and you know how to, when other people are upset and how to help them.
Yes.
Your strength is often connected to your wound. Along the way. And how can we help this current iteration of your wound and strength there by making your strength more if you can get out of it. Your strength is I had to protect my 4-year younger brother in my violent family, and I've always looked up for underdogs as a result of things, and I go around trying to help people and things. And you tell me, stop being so sensitive, you're anxious, and let's fix what's wrong with you and don't be so sensitive. No. You'd be fixing what actually makes me a special human being and what I value the most.
Yes. What I say to staff sometimes, they kind of roll their eyes usually. And then they ask me how to do it. Then I'm on the spot and I've tried to figure this out and do some training around it. Is I say, if you would just be inspiring and irresistible, I mean, just be that. Don't fall back on what you learned in books around.
I know how to be inspiring and irresistible.
I know you know that.
I'll tell you for your training. So first, the irresistible one.
Okay.
If you're with somebody, and by the way, you can use this as free dating advice too. If you want to be irresistible, you ask them about themselves, and then keep listening. And show a lot of respectful curiosity of who they are, the person, as though listening to them is the most important thing you've got to do today, and time has stopped because they are so fascinating. If you do that, you'll be irresistible.
Yes.
How to be inspiring is to give them a view that I understand where you're at, I really get who you are, and I think there's a hopeful future for you here.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
I can see the strengths in you that you can recover with. And I'm not saying it just to be cheerful. I told you all kinds of negative stuff like, wow, you really abandoned your son just like you promised you never would. But I still see how you can make it out anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
That's true hope. That's true inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
But it also has to be from their worldview, not from mine.
Mm-hmm.
So let me tell an old, you've probably heard this story of mine before, but it's my favorite story, so I'll tell it in case your viewers haven't heard it. A guy walks into my office late one afternoon, he holds up his hand like this. He says, "What do you see?"
Oh, I know the story.
I said, "I see your hand." He says, No, be more specific." All right, it's late, but I can see your swirl of your fingerprints. I can see the creases of your knuckles. And I can see your love line and your lifeline. I don't actually know which one's which, but I can see them. He says, when you can see nails and knuckles and hair, you'll be able to start seeing the world from my side instead of from yours.
Yeah.
What a lower hand. What did that?
Oh, you accidentally hit a button. There, it's gone.
That was the universe raising their hand to my hand. So my point is, if you want to be irresistible and inspiring, see the world from their side of the hand instead of from yours.
Yes.
Make plans from their side, not from yours, and give hope from their side, not from yours. There's a huge difference between a treatment plan for a non-compliant, schizophrenic, duly diagnosed, manipulative patient and a plan for a misunderstood prophet of God.
Yes.
If I help you as a misunderstood prophet of God, I'm irresistible and inspiring.
Yeah.
And so going back to your very first thing I got you sidetracked on, was you say people don't make the change. Look around and say, did they actually shift from illness-centered to person-centered? Did they actually shift from professionally driven to client-driven? Did they actually shift from deficit-based to strength-based?
Mm-hmm.
And the vast majority of the time is no, they didn't. And that's why it doesn't feel real to you.
Yeah. I think you just nailed it with just those three simple elements. I mean, if we just looked at
they're
those.
Not simple.
They're simple, but they're not easy.
Right. All right, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Because they're all counterintuitive. We believe just on the face of it, this person's a mess. Fix their illness, they'll be better. You're the professional. Tell them what to do. We'll give you, they'll be better. Fix what's wrong, they'll be better. That's all perfectly sensible. My way of saying I'm going to talk to a person on the streets and help give them choices of what to do and empower them so that they can be back to the person they were meant to be.
Yeah.
That sounds almost nonsensical.
Not to me.
Irresistible and inspiring.
Yes. Well, Mark, let's talk a little bit about your book.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't get all the way through it because it's really fat. It's got.
As my wife said, you talk too long and you write too long. So by the way, don't get intimidated by how long it is. If you read just part of it, it's fine. Little skimming things, it's fine. This is it. So I'll tell you about why I wrote on type of design. So part of it is we were doing really special things at the village.
Yes, you were.
We had a program where you said about you can see it. People, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people came from around the world, including you, came by and said, wow, I can see it, so I can do it.
Yeah.
I can see what's done. And we knew that wouldn't be forever. Usually pilot programs last 3 to 5 years. We had a good run of 25 to 30 years, which is pretty good, but it's not there
amazing.
Anymore.
Yeah, amazing.
And so people would say, well, you guys should write a book about what you're doing. And to some degree, the book is about, can I capture some of the magic, some of the way the village was set up so that people can get inspired by these various stories that we're doing and get the feeling of being there.
Yeah.
You can't be there anymore. So then how do you write a book? It turns out anybody who ever tells you should write a book, they never wrote a book themselves. It's absurdly difficult. Not only that, they never edited a book or proofread a book or promoted a book or any of the rest of that. But so I'm like, what else should it be? The story of one client going through, or different clients, the story of the program, or my story as a psychiatrist doing different things. And I finally decided on a very strange format. So one of the things you didn't say in your introduction about me is that I love travel, and I've traveled all over the world, all kinds of places. And I
well, I
really
didn't
love,
know that about you, so I couldn't see that.
right. And I love travel books. I am an expert in travel books. I've read, I know rough guides and Frommer's and Fodor's and Bedekers and Michelin. I know travel books. So what I decided was, for almost everyone, the world of psychosis, the world of this level of severe mental distress is a foreign land. It's beyond almost all of our comfort zones. All right, the one guy who wrote the screenplay to A Beautiful Mind, his parents ran a board and care, so it is in his comfort zone. That's why he made a great movie. But for most of us, unless your mother has schizophrenia or something, this is, and there are people like that. But for the vast majority of us, whether we became psychotic, whether someone in our family became psychotic, whether we're a staff member trying to help someone, whether we're a neighbor, a husband, whatever it is, it's going to be beyond our normal experiences, our comfort zone. This is traveling off the end of the map. Here be where dragons lie. And for most people, that's scary. And that's why you get, well, maybe what you do with dragons, you either kill them or lock them up. You don't befriend them. So I thought, so what if we have a travel book, a guidebook to psychosis itself, to the various experiences and the things people are going to do. And some wouldn't even call it psychosis, just other extraordinary experiences or strange. And so the book is divided in 3 parts, like most guidebooks. The first part is kind of my theory of travel and what I think is the landscape of the overall country of psychosis, and some of my background as a guide, where I came from, how I got here. The second part is a bunch of different journeys, because I do not think saying all psychosis comes from a chemical imbalance is either true or helpful. Some people have that, so I made 8 different kinds of journeys you can get there. The most common one, by the way, is grief. Half of everybody, when someone really close to them dies, starts imagining they're there, sees them around, hears their voice, thinks there's a ghost around, starts functioning less well. But we don't call this psychosis. We don't lock up people like this. Why? Because we know they're stuck. We understand it. We're not frightened. This is in the middle of the map. We've seen this before. We've got a whole stack of rituals to help with this. We have roles. We have a timeline. We know how you're going to do it. It's just fine. And we help people get over and recover through the power of our relationships and our connections. So that's my first journey. And you can call that like a little weekend trip or something. People can get psychotic through something terrible happening that's so big that they can't handle it. We used to call that nervous breakdown. People can get there by their brain doesn't process things well, it plays a lot of tricks on them or puts things together strangely, and more neurological tricks. You can get there because your development went awry. If it's at early stages, maybe you got really paranoid and you got no sense of yourself or your anger explosiveness. At later ones, maybe it had to do with your relationship with other people. People are reading my mind and know what I'm thinking and all this stuff. Or it's a spiritual level, you're drowning in deep spiritual waters and you've got all kinds of spiritual things going on, but you lost your balance. That's actually my favorite of the journey. You can get a journey that has to do with childhood trauma. Childhood trauma is incredibly associated with psychosis. I was taught you can't drive someone psychotic. You make them neurotic or personality disorder. You can't drive them psychotic. That just isn't true. And the more trauma you have, it's a dose related, bigger trauma. So how does trauma lead to psychosis? You can have an illness. All right, is this schizophrenia? Is it bipolar disorder? Is it depression? We can look at it that way. And there's people who that's a helpful look. You have to be careful not to get dehumanized on that particular journey because it tends to be dehumanized over illnesses. You can get there through drugs and alcohol. You can get there through medical conditions and delirium. Each is a different journey. That's the middle part of the book, talking about what kind of luggage you need for these journeys, what kind of emotional preparedness, what kind of things are on the story. Then the last part of the book, if you ever get that far, that's where we, that's really puts kind of the practical advice of, how to get your visa and your hotel rooms and is there good stuff for gays and lesbians or something in travel? They put all that stuff in the back of the stuff. So I put practical advice there. How about for suicide things? How about for violence? How about family issues? How about homelessness? How about employment? How about social security things? Practical advice, along with here's what the whole process of recovery looks like. And so I put it together as this guidebook. These 3 parts together. It's designed to be read by anybody.
Yes, it's
I
very
talk like I'm talking right now. I'm not using a lot of big words or this or that.
Yeah.
There's not a lot, there's no index of references with all kinds of citations and things. There's not a lot of numbers, and the only study I cite is the one I just told you about, Courtney Harding's along the way.
Yeah.
It's about, I'm just old enough to remember when doctors were supposed to learn from their patients.
Yeah.
When medicine was a practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Before we started making fun of that and saying, oh no, the real information comes from researchers and from evidence-based practice, and we need to do what the ivory towers tell us to do and the books tell us to do, and you got to follow these protocols and have fidelity to the model.
Yeah.
This book is filled with practice-based evidence, probably at least 100 different stories of people's journeys that I'm along with and learning from each of them.
The stories are what made it so real to me.
Sure.
Yeah. And I just have to go back when you're talking about dragons. You were talking about we get off into the scary areas where the dragons are. And I think you're referring there to what we typically call mental illnesses, but I'll say again so I don't say it wrong. When you're talking about the dragons, what were you talking about?
I was talking about is that if you remember those old medieval maps.
Yeah.
That have the areas, like on the cover, that's why the cover looks like that. Where these are comfort zones. All right, we know about Europe, we know about America, but in those times there were things at the edge you didn't know it was there. In the heart of Africa, there was an edge of what's in the north, the South Pole, what's up past these oceans. We think about the world is flat. You're going to fall off the edge, and when you don't know what's out there, you're frightened of it.
Yes.
And our current medical model is trying to deal with that by saying, don't be scared. We understand these chemically. We understand these biologically. These are illnesses of your brain, just like diabetes is an illness, it's an imbalance. Don't be scared. Just trust in us. We will give the meds and it'll all be okay. We can use the same medical model we fixed infections with, the same medical model we're doing pretty well with cancer with, the same medical model we're doing crappy with all kinds of chronic illnesses along the way, but we're going to use that to make it understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And
that's what I'm saying. We're looking through old eyes.
Right. But that model is such a misfit for actual experience. Mm-hmm. You take an actual mother who comes in and says, my kid is screaming. They think I'm not really their mother and there's someone else, and they're up in the middle of the night, and they're having knives and they're talking to all these other people, and it's a spirit thing, and you say, don't worry, it's just a chemical imbalance, this is just another illness. It sure as hell does not feel like that at all.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a huge mismatch between the world of experience of what we call serious mental illnesses and the simplicity and reductionism and clarity that's all false of the medical model.
Yeah.
Well, the reason for that is because at bottom, these are mental conditions, not brain conditions. Our mind is much more than our brain.
Yes. That's good.
Actually, if you'd like to, let me tell you a little. So we often think of our brain as being a giant computer.
Yes.
The reductionist view, it's a computer, it's got these circuits and all this stuff is a computer. But there's a number of things our mind can do that a computer can't. At least not today's computers in any normal way of looking at it. At least not this one on my desk when I'm talking to you. And what they can't do, for example, they cannot grow and develop changing their own programming as they go along.
Right.
Computers cannot pay attention selectively to whatever they want to pay attention to. Computers cannot fall in love when you connect it to a different computer. Computers cannot get a sense of purpose about themselves or connected to a higher level of purpose. Computers can't make a self-image of self-consciousness of who I am, aside from the data you put in them. Yeah. And when you think about all these things, That's what mental illnesses are about, all these things. Mental illnesses aren't about I eat too fast or I can't add and subtract. Those are neurological illnesses or I can't move my arms. Mm-hmm. Mental illnesses are things about your mind. They're the very things that when you reduce your mind to your brain, you eliminate and can't see anymore. Mm-hmm. You can't find the part of a brain for love or for God or for self-consciousness or for attention.
Yeah.
All you find is circuits that are connected and complex.
Well, when you were talking about dragons,
mm-hmm.
I think this fits. This is from Canterbury Tales, and part of the Beowulf story. And the story of the mead hall, and all the people are there in the mead hall, they're having a good time. And the mother dragon knows that these people can hurt her, and she knows that she can hurt them. And she has a little baby dragon, and she tells him, stay away from the mead hall. But the little baby dragon hears the music coming from the mead hall, and he thinks it's so beautiful. It's just so compelling, and he's just drawn in by it. And he slips up under the window when he's listening to the music. And someone says, oh my God, there's a dragon. And they start hitting him and beating him. And he's just like, what? I'm just listening to the music. And they chase him off and they hurt him. And he's wounded, and he goes back to his mother, and she says, I told you not to go there. It's not good. It's not good to go there. But he loves the music, and he gets to be a big dragon, and he wants to go back and hear the music. And of course, they do the same thing, but this time he just rips the mead hall apart, kills a bunch of them, throws them up in the air. These old stories, just demolishes everything. And everybody says, what a bad dragon. But they made him. They created the dragon because he would have been happy to just listen to the music. And I think of that often when we talk about, I'm just going to say, people that scare us because we can't, we're out of our comfort zone, as you say. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, in so many instances, we created them. We created the system that didn't work for them, and then we blame it on them. They didn't get well. The truth is, we didn't give them the right service. They kept getting worse and worse. They might have gotten dangerous because we were mean to them, because they were scared. I don't know. I don't want to go too far with this, but I just kept thinking about it when you were talking about the dragons, of the unknown, basically, the things that scare us.
We certainly didn't treat dragons well.
No, we still don't.
And so what I try to describe in the book, it says, instead of coming from this place, we come with four issues or challenges to connecting with the mental illness. One is we're frightened.
Yeah.
Two is we feel I can't understand them. I don't know what this is. It's incomprehensible. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Three is we feel like I can't connect to them. I can't relate. Mm-hmm. And four is we feel hopeless. It doesn't matter what you do anywhere. They're doing worse and worse. It's hopeless anyway.
Well, and hopeless about ourselves.
Right.
Like
so
we can't.
if those are your 4 points on your compass,
yeah,
your journey is going to be pretty terrible.
Yes. But
all 4 of those can be changed, can be combated. The dangerousness, fear one, can turn into respectful curiosity. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The incomprehensible one can be turned into understanding them as a person rather than turning them into a diagnosis or an illness that you don't know what causes it.
Yeah.
The connectedness one is about stopping segregating people and stopping eliminate and reaching out and connecting and engaging and welcoming.
Relationship.
You can have relationships. That was one of the huge findings from peer support or that says, wait, we can have a relationship with each other. These people aren't unrelatable.
Yeah.
It may take going out, where you're a little strange sitting outside with the music over there, and let me sit out there with you a little bit, and why do you look weird like this, and what's going on, and it may take a bit of curiosity and courage and hope and compassion to be able to do this. What's the backside of the hand look like to the little dragon? They never even asked.
Right. Yes.
And the hopelessness, we can be hopeful because recovery is actually a probability if people are given the right circumstances and things to do that with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did a little presentation about this to a place that does a bunch of homeless transitional livings for people that are struggling with the people with psychosis, serious mental illness is there, and can we just send them to the hospital and lock them up instead? And I asked them, so if you think of these 4 barriers, which one is the one you think is the one that actually gets in your way the most, that makes it so that you want to say, never mind, I don't want to deal with this, I want to lock them up, have to call them the psychiatric team instead. Any guess which of the 4 they said was the biggest barrier for them?
I would go with the third one, but I don't know. Fear might kill everything right out the gate.
They said, and remember, these are people who hang out with other homeless people, so they may be a little more courageous than the others.
Yeah, yeah.
But they said the hopelessness one, which was not what I would have thought at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Going back to Spitzer saying, I know it's hopeless because I said so.
Yeah.
That's responsible. That attitude, that public putting it in the books so the young umpires see it over and over again, is now the biggest barrier. Because when most people don't want to lock people up and put them away. Or at least you have a mix of this, take them away and being compassionate together.
Yeah,
often
yeah.
they're often bedfellows, even though they don't exist very well together. But the thing that pushes them over the edge is say, I'm hopeless. There's nothing else I can do. I'm out of ideas. We've got to lock them up. There's nothing else I can do. It's hopeless. They might as well make that the criteria for locking people up. They say it's about gravely disabled or dangerous, but it's actually about hopeless. Nobody locks somebody up they're hopeful about.
Yeah, yeah.
So long, I shouldn't say nobody, but nothing is absolute, of course, in our world.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you say, so what would, if we were hopeful, what could we do better? Yeah. And my view of psychosis is that it isn't just about these changes in reality, about hearing voices or being paranoid or delusional. That's one part of a triangle. Another part of the triangle is your self-identity has gotten lost. You're not sure who you are, where you're going, and what the story adds up to the story of my life, or who you're supposed to be.
We give them an alternate identity as a patient.
And that many people, that identity doesn't fit at all. I heard Patricia Deegan speaking last week at a conference of people. It's a whole group of people, by the way, who most of them have psychosis and they're successful in all kinds of different things, who want something else besides coercion and meds. And they're looking at old psychoanalytic things, they're looking at hearing voices things, at peer advocacy things, spiritual things, of social justice things, all kinds of things, that we want something else. So what's your I got distracted there. Patricia Deegan said when she was first put in a hospital and given a bunch of meds so she could no longer think straight and lost her brilliant mind and was fuzzy, and they said, you're going to be like this forever because it's better because it made the voices quieter. Yeah. That she lost her whole sense of self and her dignity.
Well, there's another part to that story that I heard several years ago. She's sitting in her doctor's office and he's telling her, you'll never get well. You're only going to get worse. You'll need to do this forever. You'll never work, blah, blah, blah. She's listening to all this and she says, I wanted to throw myself across his desk and strangle him. And then she says, I walked out, I'm standing on the street corner, and I said, I am going to make him wrong. Now, I don't know if you call that hopefulness. There's some grit in there. There's some determination mixed in with the hopefulness. It's like, no, you are not going to do this to me. If we could figure out how to pull that forward in everybody.
Well, that she was so desperate, wanting her last bit of self.
Yes.
That she was willing to fight for that.
Yes, yes.
I knew a lady who, she was in the state hospital for a couple of years and losing her life had gone way downhill. And they hadn't I don't know why they did this, but she said they did. They had voted the staff of who was least likely to ever leave, and it was her. And she said she asked somebody what day it was and realized she'd lost a whole year. She didn't have the year right. Said, I'm going to be here forever unless I start fighting for myself.
Yeah.
I better learn about these meds. I better learn for myself. I better get things better. I better start taking some control. That is currently one of the more popular ways our system empowers people is by enraging them so badly that they believe they start fighting themselves. But what kind of partnership is that?
Yes, yes.
I mean, we don't have that
perfect.
That be our number one tool in how we get people to start believing in themselves.
Yeah.
All right. So we got changes in your reality, changes in your self-esteem and your self-identity.
Yeah.
And changes in your relationships, being isolated, being paranoid, being disconnected along the way.
Yeah.
Our normal system focuses almost entirely on the changes in your reality.
Yeah.
With meds, they're trying to talk you out of it, or reality checking or grounding or stuff like this. And is willing to sacrifice your self-identity, making you a patient instead.
Mm-hmm.
Willing to sacrifice your relationships, locking you in a hospital, taking you out of your college, segregating you in a board and care with only people with mental illnesses, saying you've got to spend all day long in groups with people like this and you can't go back to being a soldier anymore. And we rely entirely on the top one about reality. The meds are going to hold it together.
Yeah.
And as a result, getting off your meds is incredibly difficult when you only pay attention to that 1/3. But there are programs all over the place that focus on the other two sides of the triangle, that focus on relationships and focus on self-identity. Very popular now is a business about open dialogue from Finland, where it says that we're going to keep your relationships going as much as we can. Relationships, focus on that one of the triangle. And their result is that 80% of people get out of their psychosis in 6 months or a year, and only 20% ever needed any med. Because they did it all in that one part of the triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you stop and think now about all your favorite recovery programs, clubhouses, supportive employment, peer support, open dialogue, hearing voices, what's the one in the malls in Australia, Mind, you think of all these things, harm reduction, motivational interviewing, my kind of supportive medications, all these things, cognitive behavior therapy for psychosis, all of them are based on the other two, one or both of the other two parts of the triangle, and not directly on the experiencing reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can end up psychotic when all three fall apart.
Yeah.
Any one of the three can be the one that starts the process down. Any one of the three can be the one that starts recovery back up. Any one of the three can be the one that holds you together so you don't keep relapsing or falling back into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our system is only doing the one part of the three and sacrificing the other two, and then wondering why you can't get off meds.
Yeah. Well, there's something else about getting off meds. I was on an antidepressant for like 33 years. Not the same one the whole time, but varying ones. And I would start to feel better. And I had I've always said my depression has usually been an agitated depression. It's kind of a mix of anxiety and depression. Once in a while, I go clear over the edge and just be plain old depressed, but usually I'm in that agitated state. And so I'd start to feel better, and I'd go, I can get off this medication. I can't tell you how many times I tried to get off of medication. And I'm not even talking about the hardcore. I'm just talking about antidepressants and anti-anxiety.
And you don't have to answer any questions about your stuff personally, but when you took the meds, did you then say, what am I going to change about me? What am I going to do to strengthen things up? What am I improve my self-identity, my purpose, my relationships, my connections, my meaning and things, my spiritual connections? Did you change those things that, oh, I'm just feeling better and then I can get off my meds?
I just felt better.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
If you assume the meds feeling better, that was all of the story. Rather than, now that I'm feeling better. Well, actually, let me tell you a story from one of my college students goes with this. This guy comes in, he's a young black man raised by his mom, who was very church-going and very religious, and he was a very good boy. He was good at school, he followed through, he was proud, he ended up in college, he was an athlete and stuff, but it turns out he's gay. And you couldn't be gay in his mom's religion or in his black athlete friends. It just didn't work. And he's repressing himself more and more and more, and he's getting more and more and more depressed. Can't do anything, no motivation to be like doing anything, he's falling apart. So I said, well, it seems like you're stuck in your development. What do you think would help? Something to make you an SSRI to think less spinning around, an SNRI because you're all slow in your body, a Wellbutrin to have some energy and stimulation so you can do more, or Remeron or Trazodone so you can sleep. But would any of those four you think help you get unstuck? Once again, I'm always giving choices. He chooses the Wellbutrin to give energy. He is energized, feels more positive, better about himself, and then he goes and comes out of the closet with his mom. And his mom is totally rejecting.
Yeah.
You can't hear you do this. And he is not crushed. He says, I'm not actually that surprised at this, but I've taken control of my own life and my own narrative now. I've got the energy back of my own life force. I can do things again. I'll be me. I'm respectful to my mom, so I'll do whatever it goes to, but I'm going to be the leader of my own life, my own identity. He's recapturing his own identity. I'm going to have friends that support this. I'm going to have relationships that support this. A couple months later, he stops the Wellbutrin. And he's fine. He doesn't need it because he made the changes.
I see.
In the other part of it. The end isn't I felt better. I felt better, so you did what? To change your life to get unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling better is not the goal. The goal is to get unstuck.
Yes, I love that. And I don't want to go on and on about my own situation, but I've always had, what saved me always is my spiritual connection. So I always had that going for myself. I always worked. And so between work and spirituality, and then the medication just leveled me out. And there's good things and bad things about that, but it didn't recover me. And when I first started hearing about recovery, and this was about 1990, 8 or something. No, 1995. And I heard people talk about recovery, and I thought, I don't know what that is, but I know I don't have it. Because I'm still scared to death of whatever's going on inside of me. And I feel like it could jump out at any minute.
It's still a dragon.
The dragon would be in there. And I started going online and realizing I wasn't the only one that couldn't get off. People were talking about it, and it's like what it feels like to try to get off is after about the third day, you feel like you have the flu, a really bad flu, and you start getting depressed. So being depressed and having the flu, that's a bad combination. And I could only stand that for maybe 5 days, and then I'd go back on the medication. It turns out that's what other people were doing too. I did finally get off a year and a half ago, but
Well, actually, I don't want to, that story is actually shows something about that having good expertise about medications is actually helpful. That's not a relapse from no self-identity and no relationship. That's the biology of that the antidepressants created a feedback loop, and you have to slowly get off them because you're having withdrawal or discontinuation symptoms to go much more. That business of the flu and the depression, that's not your old depression. That's a withdrawal symptom, and you have to get off way slower than that to make that work. And so isn't like there isn't any biology, or that there isn't a brain underneath things. And this is an integrated model. This isn't throw away all pills, or throw away all knowledge about how to get off pills reasonably. This is how to use them in your particular story, your particular life, your particular goals, your particular destiny, your particular both biology, psychology, spirituality, and social context.
It did feel like it was purely biological.
It probably was. Yeah. The way you describe that sounds like the discontinuation syndrome that comes off of many of the antidepressants.
Yeah. Well, then I didn't know this, and I didn't know what was going on till I went online and read all these stories from other people saying the same thing. And then I did exactly what you said. I had to go really, really slow. And I don't like to go slow. So this was like the slowest I've ever done anything.
All right. So does any of your group know, I don't know if you've done a thing with Robert Whitaker before?
Oh yeah, we really like him.
So this is Robert's main point, and is that the meds can create feedback loops, can create issues that if you stay on them for years and years, you said 20-something years, you stay on for years and years instead of months and months, that then you may well have chemical changes that you have to get off really slow to get off. And there are some psychiatrists working on, well, how, no drug company is ever going to do a study of how to get off of your drugs or what harm they do. But there are some guys working on what are protocols for how to de-prescribe. But I would argue, be careful when you're using that. It isn't only the biology. The biology is relevant. Just like when I saw something, wait, we need to change your dose here. The biology is relevant to these things. These pills are not that easy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can make them all over the counter. These pills are not that easy. But there's also pay attention to what's going on in your life, what's going on in your self-identity, what's happening. I would wager if you would have tried to get off even slowly or correctly at times in your life where you were uncertain of where you were going, where you didn't have connections, or you felt lost, or you're overstressed and stuff, it might not have worked so well then for other reasons besides the biological ones.
Well, when I felt something like that coming on, I would never think about getting off. I've got to wait till things level out here. Right. But what I did have to do is sometimes I'd have to go back up and then go down, go back up and then go back down. So it was a long process of and a difficult one. Yeah. Well, I've just taken way too much time talking about myself here, Mark. I think our time is pretty up. So I just want to thank you so much for your time. And I'm glad you're going to come back and talk with George Woods and me. I think we'll have a wonderful, rich conversation. So
I want to close this thing. One thing is that there's a number of people who are kind of discouraged about recovery. We had all this hope and promise in the 90s, and we had a President's Commission, we had the Mental Health Services Act, and we had peer and all these things, excitement stuff, and the dealers are doing strong. It's like, well, was it all for anything? It's all kind of died down, and now they're making more coercive things, and there's more homelessness than ever, and there's more mental health. Has this been about anything at all? And I think two things. One is this is an actual revolution. Revolutions take a while and go up and back as people come to terms with things. Think of our biggest paradigm shifts, things like evolution or of relativity. How many of us really understand either of those? Really, it takes a fair bit for a Roman check to happen, but when you get talking about it, when you experience it, it feels so right. It feels
Yes.
in tune with
Yes.
what people really need, what people really want with these things.
Yes.
That it still is a message, it still is a revolution worth pushing.
Yes, absolutely.
Because lives depend on it, and there are people who will recover and maybe get off meds, maybe not get off meds, do meaningful things, have love and have connections, raise families, do productive things, all kinds of cool things, and they won't if we don't pursue this dream.
We have to hang on to it. We just have to.
And there's going to be ups and downs because it is a giant paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And paradigm shifts are super hard, and pendulums go up and back.
Yeah. Thank you for that hopeful way to end here, that even though we might be on the downswing from time to time, if we just keep doing it, we're going to make progress with it. Yeah.
I was stunned the other day at that conference with a bunch of young people who had never heard of me or seen me before. And they're like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. Have you told other people about this? Have you told psychiatrists done this? Yeah, I've been doing this for 30 years. The message is still an extremely powerful one. We did join a wonderful movement. And even though you don't win every battle or struggles along the way, or we get old and need to move on, this movement is what will save us and help people recover ultimately.
I think so too. I think so too. So thank you so much.
See you later, Lauren.
Wonderful to reconnect with you.
Take care.
Well, there you have it, my friends. I love hearing Mark recount all these amazing experiences and knowings and wisdoms that are so important for our work today. Ruby just got up off the couch to join us. She's been having a tough time, so she's spending a lot of time on the couch. And like I said in the beginning, Mark will be back. You won't want to miss it because he's coming back with Dr. George Woods that you've heard earlier. I can't wait to listen to the two of those folks talk and learn from them. So take care, my friends. Thanks for joining us. Just sending you lots of love and joy and happiness for an amazing Thanksgiving, because that's coming up next week. I think we'll do a podcast next week. We're not going to miss because of Thanksgiving. Yeah, we'll be here. Yeah. Okay. Love you very much and see you soon. Bye-bye.